Today's a tough one. I've been pondering this for a while, and I've had lots of betrayed spouses ask me about this on Twitter, on our website, and email. And that is this, and it's a really tough one to grab hold of. It's how do you, as a betrayed spouse, deal with the consequences of having to draw lines or boundaries in your life? A perfect example is someone said to me, Samuel, I know I need to file for divorce, but it's going to hurt like hell because now, because of something I didn't do, I'm going to have to split my kids with my spouse, or I'm going to have to suffer financial loss, or we may have to sell our home. So there's all this suffering that I'm going to experience because of what my spouse has done. And I don't want that. I don't want those consequences. How do I deal with this pain and these consequences that are coming my way when this is the actions of another, not myself? So before we get into the nitty-gritty, you have to really ask yourself, is it time that you need to draw boundaries? Is it time that you are at the point where you're going to have to decide that enough is enough? And only you know that. I've said that before. I don't know. But what I do know is you're going to have to begin to understand, is the pain that's going to come from the consequences and the boundaries that you as a betrayed spouse are going to have to enact, is that pain going to be worse than the pain that's going to come if you don't draw those boundaries, if you don't draw those lines in the sand, if you don't file for divorce or establish a legal separation? What's going to be worse? Because if you are not ready to do this, then I would encourage you to hold off on this big ultimatum or this big line in the sand, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. You see, oftentimes betrayed spouses will say, I've had enough, I can't keep enabling this, I don't want to be codependent, I'm not going to allow this to happen, and so here's what's going on, X, Y, and Z, here's the consequences, I'm done with this. And then the consequences start to play out, right? And now it hurts, and sometimes it hurts more, and it's inconvenient, and it's gut-wrenching. And then at that point, oftentimes the betrayed spouses will abandon their plan or abandon the consequences and say, no, this hurts too much. Now that's caused more problems because the unfaithful hasn't really learned. They haven't really probably had enough time to have it really absorb and kick in. And so now you have done this false start, which has actually created more damage and more confusion and more pain than if you finally were ready to say, okay, enough is enough, here we go, and no matter how difficult it gets, I'm willing to walk that out because I'm willing to go through this short-term pain to get healthy rather than long-term pain to have the pain only compound because nothing ever really changed. We just kept doing what we were doing, and you're going to wake up in 2, 3, 4, 10 years and be even more angry, even more damaged because you didn't draw a line in the sand when you know you needed to. So how do you do it? What do you do? How do you handle the consequences when they come at you because of you just trying to get healthy? Number one, you have to ask yourself, is it time? Before you make that decision, you have to really ask yourself, am I at that point where I'm willing to endure some consequences that are going to come my way, all for the hope of long-term health and healing, which may mean a divorce and maybe getting remarried one day, which may mean selling the home, which may mean, there's a litany of things that are coming your way. But you have to ask yourself. I would spend significant amounts of time praying and getting feedback and finding people that you can trust to get their opinion. If you don't come from faith, you better find some people who are experts that you can talk to find out, is it time? Make sure you're dealing with people who've been through this before. Make sure you're dealing with people who are experts. Make sure you are dealing with people who have their feet on the ground and have maybe gone through separation or gone through divorce so that you know what's coming. Because I promise you, one of the biggest mistakes we can make is being naive about what the future is going to be like when we take our stand. The biggest vetting out process is to be able to say, where's your heart at? Are you just mad? Are you just pissed? Are you just wanting to act out in vengeance? Or have you experienced a timeline? Have you gone through a significant amount of time, which could be just a few months, could be several years, and your heart is finally at the point where you see that this is wrong, you see that this is abusive, or you see that this is dysfunctional, and you're no longer willing to allow it to go on anymore? What's vital is, where is your heart, and in what spirit, whether you come from faith or not, what spirit is inside your heart right now? Is it a desire for health and healing, or is it a desire for vengeance and pain and suffering on the unfaithful spouse who has committed these atrocities? Another factor to consider is to never do this out of a knee-jerk reaction. If you're going to begin to lay out some consequences, if you're going to draw some lines, you have to make sure that it's not a knee-jerk reaction, because if it does, you're not going to be willing to suffer and endure the difficulties that are coming your way. Because whenever you draw a line within a relationship of this level of significance, you're going to be depriving yourself of some things. You're going to be experiencing pain because of your own choices, but again, you're willing to do it because you know you need to get healthy. So you cannot make this decision over just a simple glass of whiskey or wine. You can't make this decision because you're mad. You have to find a point of clarity where your mind is clear, your heart is open, you're not acting out of vengeance, and you're not acting out of codependency. Another variable that I think is really important is, if you're not ready, or if you feel like you're getting ready, I would encourage you to write why you need to lay out these consequences. Get a journal and start to write. Get on the computer. If you are just not a writer, nowadays with phones you can do voice memos. But I would encourage you to begin to create a footprint, if you will, of your frustration, so that you can go back and read or listen to these thoughts when the going gets rough. Because I assure you, when you begin to lay out a plan and draw lines, it's going to hurt. You're going to need to be able to go back to something to help reinforce your courage and your bravery for why you're doing what you're doing. And so when you can go back and read the gut level honesty and the gut level hopelessness and despair that you're feeling because your spouse refuses to quit their affair, or they refuse to get help, or they refuse to stop doing the things that they're doing, or they refuse to stop the abuse, you're going to have a motivating force. And one of the best motivating forces is your own heart, your own pain, your own agony, your own despair, where you can look back and say, no, I feel and I felt all these things. You know what? Yes, it hurts to do this, but I remember why I'm doing it. The next principle, if you will, is don't do this and then go back on it unless you're absolutely sure that maybe you overreacted. If you attempt to do this brave, courageous thing and draw lines in the sand, and then you cower back and say, well, no, I don't, and all of a sudden maybe your own codependency, your own inadequacies kick in, the pain is too much, and then you go back on it, you're only creating a pattern that you know is going to come back to bite you, because in another few months or years, you're going to have to maybe still draw a line in the sand because the dysfunctional behavior has not ceased, and now it's going to be that much harder to do because your unfaithful spouse is not going to respect you, or they're not going to have any kind of reverence because you did this once, twice, or however many times, and it did not work before. Now, I will tell you the caveat to this is, if you have drawn a line and you have had significant amounts of time to think, pray, think critically, whatever it is that you do, and you realize, okay, I overreacted, or I blew it, or what have you, you have to have a plan to be able to go to your spouse and say, listen, I've learned some things, I've seen some things. Don't be afraid to humble yourself when you're wrong. Sometimes the humility of the person who has drawn lines to see things clearly will actually move the resisting, unwilling party closer to you, because you're willing to humble yourself and admit when you have not seen things clearly enough. Finally, you absolutely have to prioritize this. If you're going to draw lines, if you're going to stand up for yourself, if you're going to stick up for yourself in this dysfunctional situation, you're going to have to prioritize this. This can't be a little side thought. This can't be just a, well, I'm reading some articles. That's not going to do it. If you're going to make this change, if you're going to stand up for yourself and stop the dysfunction, this has to be one of the biggest things in your life. From reading books to reading articles to watching videos to getting on the website. Become a member at affairrecovery.com if you like. You'll get access to more articles. You can actually submit a question and Rick will answer it in video. But this has to be a priority. If you're not ready to make this a priority, don't do this kind of offhandedly or out of anger or out of resentment. Do this with a plan. Make this a priority in your life so that you get the help, you get the healing, you get the clarity that you need. So if and when it goes south and things get really hard, you're able to look back and read or listen to the courage in which you showed yourself to say, enough is enough. I am not going to live this way, no matter how much pain I'm feeling now, because the pain I'm feeling in this short term is going to pale in comparison to the joy that I'm going to feel when I get out of this dysfunction and I experience the healing and the life and the joy that I'm going to find when I walk through and walk out of this temporary pain.